Welcome back. If this is your first time here, this channel is simple. At the end of your day, when the noise has settled and the world has finally gone quiet, we take one of the books that actually matters, and we walk through it together. Slowly, no rush, no agenda. Just the ideas, delivered at the pace of someone who wants you to actually absorb them. So get comfortable. Let your body get heavy. And let's spend the next little while putting something worth keeping into your mind before you sleep. Tonight's book is one that has found its way into the hands of millions of people who didn't necessarily go looking for a self-help book, but found themselves holding one anyway. Because The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown doesn't feel like a self-help book. It feels like a conversation with someone who has done the hard work of being honest about being human and wants to share what she found on the other side. Brené Brown is a research professor at the University of Houston. She has spent over 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. She is not offering theory from a distance. She is offering findings from thousands of interviews with real people, filtered through her own life and her own very public reckoning with the ideas she studies. The Gifts of Imperfection was published in 2010 and carries a subtitle worth sitting with. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. Not who you could be with enough effort, not who you will be when you finally get it together. Who you are, right now, as you are, tonight. That is what this book is about. And it turns out that getting there requires something most of us were never taught and many of us actively avoid. It requires wholehearted living. And it starts with understanding what has been getting in the way. Let's begin with the concept at the center of everything Brown teaches: worthiness. Brown says that after years of research, after thousands of conversations, one thing became clearer than anything else. There is a profound difference between the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who struggle for it. And that difference is not looks or wealth or success or having had an easier life. The difference is that the people who feel loved and like they belong simply believe they are worthy of love and belonging. That's it. That is the whole thing. And the people who struggle, who feel on the outside of connection, who never quite feel like enough, share one common experience. They question their worthiness. They believe somewhere underneath everything that love and belonging are things you have to earn, things that can be taken away, things that depend on you being a certain way, achieving certain things, never making certain mistakes. Brown calls this the hustle for worthiness, the endless performing, proving, pleasing, and perfecting that most of us do without even realizing we are doing it. The constant low-level effort to be enough by being more productive, more put together, more successful, more liked, more in control. And she says this hustle, however exhausting, makes a terrible kind of sense. Because somewhere along the way, most of us received a message, not necessarily in words, that our worth was conditional, that love came with requirements, that belonging depended on fitting in. And we adapted. Of course we did. We are human beings. Adaptation is what we do. But the adaptation came at a cost, and the cost is this. We lost touch with the part of ourselves that is worthy simply by existing. The part that doesn't need to earn anything. The part that was enough before the world started telling us otherwise. Wholehearted living, Brown says, is the practice of returning to that part. Not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently, courageously, and with an enormous amount of self-compassion along the way. Before we go further, we need to talk about shame. Because Brown says shame is the primary thing standing between most people and wholehearted living, and most of us have never examined it directly. Shame is not guilt. This distinction matters enormously. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad. Guilt is about behavior. Shame is about identity. And while guilt can be a useful signal that we have acted against our values and need to make it right, shame is almost never useful. It doesn't make us better. It makes us smaller. Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It is the feeling that if people really knew us, really saw us, they would leave. They would be disgusted. They would confirm the worst thing we secretly suspect about ourselves. And shame, she says, cannot survive being spoken. This is one of the most important findings of her research. Shame requires secrecy, silence, and judgment to grow. The moment you bring it into the light, share it with someone who responds with empathy rather than judgment, it begins to lose its power. This is why vulnerability matters so much in her work. Not vulnerability as weakness, not oversharing with anyone who will listen, but the selective, courageous act of letting yourself be truly seen by people who have earned the right to hear your story. Brown says there are 3 things shame needs to grow: secrecy, silence, and judgment. And the antidote to each of those is the same: empathy. Not fixing, not advising, not silver lining. Just someone saying, I hear you. I've been there. You are not alone in this. Now let's talk about the guideposts. Because the Gifts of Imperfection is organized around 10 guideposts for wholehearted living, and each one is framed as a letting go and a moving toward. A releasing of what keeps us small, and an embracing of what allows us to be fully alive. We're going to move through these at a bedtime pace, not rushing, just letting each one settle before we move to the next. The first guidepost is letting go of what people think and cultivating authenticity. Authenticity, Brown says, is not a fixed thing you either have or don't. It is a daily practice, a choice to show up and be real even when it would be easier, safer, or more comfortable to perform a version of yourself that you think will be better received. And here is what makes authenticity genuinely hard. Sometimes being authentic means disappointing people. It means saying no when yes would be easier. It means expressing a view that not everyone will agree with. It means letting people see you struggling rather than pretending everything is fine. Brown says many people are afraid of authenticity because they believe if they let people see who they really are, they will be liked less. And sometimes that is true. But she also found something else. That the people who practice authenticity consistently report feeling more connected, not less. Because the connections they do have are real. They are with people who know them, not a performance of them. You cannot connect deeply with someone you are hiding from. And most of us are hiding from almost everyone, almost all of the time. The second guidepost is letting go of perfectionism and cultivating self-compassion. Brown is very careful here to distinguish between perfectionism and the pursuit of excellence. Healthy striving, she says, is motivated by wanting to grow, to do good work, to live according to your values. It asks, how can I improve? Perfectionism is different. Perfectionism is motivated by fear, by the belief that if I look perfect, do everything perfectly, never make mistakes, I can avoid the pain of judgment and shame. It asks, what will people think? And here is the cruel irony of perfectionism. It doesn't protect you from shame, it amplifies it. Because every mistake, every failure, every moment of falling short of your own impossible standard becomes confirmation of the thing you feared most, that you are not enough. Self-compassion is the antidote. And Brown draws heavily on the work of researcher Kristin Neff here, who defines self-compassion as 3 things: self-kindness, treating yourself with the same warmth you would offer a good friend. Common humanity, recognizing that struggle and failure are universal human experiences, not personal evidence of your deficiency. And mindfulness, seeing your situation clearly without over-identifying with the pain or dramatizing it. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It is not lowering your standards. It is extending to yourself the basic human decency you would naturally extend to almost anyone else. The third guidepost is letting go of numbing and powerlessness and cultivating a resilient spirit. This one is quiet but profound. Brown says that when we cannot tolerate discomfort, we numb. And numbing is not just alcohol or substances. Numbing is anything we use to take the edge off feelings we don't want to feel. Overeating, overworking, scrolling, shopping, staying busy. Anything that puts a layer between us and the raw experience of being alive. And here's the problem she found in her research. You cannot selectively numb emotions. When you numb the dark ones, the grief and the fear and the shame, you also numb the light ones. The joy, the love, the gratitude, the wonder. They come as a package. You cannot turn down the volume on one without turning it down on all of them. Resilience, she says, is not the absence of difficulty. It is the ability to move through difficulty without losing yourself. And it is built not by avoiding hard feelings, but by developing the capacity to sit with them, to feel them, to let them move through you rather than locking them in by pretending they are not there. The fourth guidepost is letting go of scarcity and fear and cultivating gratitude and joy. Brown made a finding in her research that surprised her. She expected to find that the people who experienced the most joy were the ones whose lives were going best, whose circumstances were most favorable. But that is not what she found. What she found is that the people who experienced the most joy also practiced the most gratitude. Not because they had more to be grateful for, but because they were paying attention. They were actively noticing the good, naming it, savoring it, rather than rushing past it toward the next thing. She also found something that stopped her completely. Joy, she discovered, is one of the most vulnerable emotions we experience. Because when we feel genuine joy, we are aware of how much we have to lose. And so many of us, rather than sitting fully in joyful moments, preemptively dress rehearse tragedy. We think about everything that could go wrong. We brace ourselves. We refuse to be fully happy because fully happy feels too exposed. She calls this foreboding joy. And she says the antidote is gratitude. Practiced, deliberate, spoken gratitude. Not as a performance, but as a way of saying to the universe, I see this. I receive this. I am not going to let fear talk me out of actually feeling it. The fifth guidepost is letting go of the need for certainty and cultivating intuition and faith. We live in a culture that prizes certainty, data, evidence, proof, guarantees. And while there is nothing wrong with any of those things, Brown says that a life lived only within the boundaries of what can be proven leaves out enormous swaths of what makes life meaningful. Intuition is not magic. It is the accumulated wisdom of your experience, processed below the level of conscious thought, and surfaced as a feeling, a knowing, a pull in a particular direction. It has been undervalued and dismissed, particularly in professional and intellectual circles, for generations. But the people Brown studied who reported living wholeheartedly trusted their intuition. They didn't always get it right, but they listened to it. They took it seriously. They treated it as information. Faith, she says, is not necessarily religious, though it can be. It is the willingness to hold the belief that meaning exists even when you cannot see it, that the hard things are not just random cruelty, that something is at work in your life that you may not fully understand, but can choose to trust. The sixth guidepost is letting go of comparison and cultivating creativity and play. Comparison is one of the quietest and most persistent thieves of joy. It is the habit of measuring your insides against other people's outsides, your effort against their results, your rough draft against their finished product. And Brown says, comparison is also the enemy of creativity. Because creativity requires the willingness to make something that might not be good, to try something that might not work, to put yourself into something without knowing how it will be received. And comparison short-circuits all of that. Why begin if you can already see that someone else is further ahead? Play, she says, is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Not for children only, for everyone. Play is any activity engaged in for its own sake, without concern for outcome or productivity or what it looks like to others. And Brown found that the people who had completely given up play in their adult lives were the most exhausted, the most numb, the most disconnected from joy. You don't have to be good at the thing you do for play. That is the whole point. The goodness is not the point. The doing is the point. The seventh guidepost is letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and cultivating rest and play. This one lands differently depending on where you are in life. But Brown says something that is worth sitting with tonight of all nights. We have created a culture in which being busy is a badge of honor, in which exhaustion is evidence of importance, in which rest feels like laziness and stopping feels like falling behind. And the cost of this is enormous. Not just in health and productivity, though those costs are real, but in the quality of presence we bring to our own lives, to our relationships, to the moments that actually matter. Rest is not a reward for finishing everything. You will never finish everything. Rest is a practice, a choice, a declaration that your worth is not measured by your output, and that your life is not a series of tasks to be completed, but an experience to be lived. You are lying down right now. That is not nothing. That is exactly right. The eighth guidepost is letting go of self-doubt and and cultivating meaningful work. Brown says that one of the most painful experiences a human being can have is to do work that has no meaning to them, to spend the majority of their waking hours in service of something they do not believe in or care about. Meaningful work is not necessarily paid work. It is not necessarily prestigious work. It is work, in the broadest sense of engaged effort, that connects to something you care about, that uses something real about you, that leaves you feeling like you have contributed something genuine. She also addresses the voice of supposed to, the internal narrator that says you are supposed to want this job, this lifestyle, this version of success. You are supposed to be further along. You are supposed to have figured this out by now. That voice is not your voice. It is assembled from every external message you have ever received about what a good life looks like. And it is worth questioning, regularly and honestly. What do you actually want? Not what you are supposed to want. What do you, in the quietest and most honest part of yourself, actually care about? The ninth guidepost is letting go of anxiety as a lifestyle and cultivating laughter, song, and dance. Brown says that anxiety has become so normalized in modern life that many people no longer even recognize it as a state they are in. It is just the baseline, the hum underneath everything, the sense that something is always slightly wrong or about to go wrong. And she says that laughter, genuine unguarded laughter, is one of the fastest ways out of that state. Not because it fixes anything, but because it is the opposite of control. It is the willingness to be surprised by life, To find something genuinely funny, rather than managing everything so carefully that nothing unexpected can get through. Song and dance she includes not necessarily literally, but as symbols of full-body participation in life. The willingness to let yourself be moved. To feel something in your body rather than just processing it in your head. To be present in a way that is not just mental, but physical and emotional and alive. The 10th and final guidepost is letting go of the fear of the greater world and cultivating calm and stillness. Brown ends with something that connects directly to where you are right now. The practice of stillness, not as an escape from the world, but as a way of staying grounded within it. She says that calm is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to stay present with emotion without being overwhelmed by it. To feel the fear, the grief, the uncertainty, and to remain, in the deepest sense, okay. And stillness is not emptiness. It is the practice of creating enough quiet inside yourself that you can hear what actually matters to you, beneath the noise of obligation and expectation and other people's opinions, beneath the hustle, beneath the performance. There is something there. There has always been something there. Something that knows who you are and what you care about and what kind of life feels true to you. Stillness is how you find your way back to it. So as the day fully releases its hold on you tonight, here is what Brené Brown most wants you to take into your sleep. You are already worthy. Not when you achieve more. Not when you fix the things you think are broken about you. Not when you finally have it all together. Now. As you are. Imperfect and tired and real and here. The gifts of imperfection are not the imperfections themselves. They are what becomes possible when you stop trying so hard to hide them. Connection, authenticity, real love, real belonging, the kind that doesn't depend on you being something other than what you are. You don't have to earn your place here. You already have one. Let that be the last thought tonight. You are enough. You always were. Good night.